Hello, good morning. My name is Michaela Bauer, and I'm here to present over Module 12 case study, The Budget Debacle. Okay, so let's begin by summarizing the case study. Just for some background information, we are reading this from the perspective as the principal, Mr. Carlos Santos. So we begin by stating just kind of some basic facts about the school. We're at Briardale Elementary with roughly 600 students. The school district has 6 elementaries, 2 middle schools, and a high school. The thing about Briardale is it sits in like the center of the community. So if the community ever needs a place or a community center, the elementary is volunteered to be that place. Currently, there is a committee established to help with fundraising, the basic general needs for curriculum and the funds for that. This year at the school, there is a new president taking over. His name is Mr. Barley. He is currently a Harvard graduate who is a huge supporter of the arts, music, foreign languages, and electives. His goal is to help do one of the biggest fundraisers ever that Briardale has ever had. With that, he has a friend who was a fraternity brother. His name is Mr. Morley, and he is on another committee at another school. So they are being pretty competitive. What ends up happening is Mr. Barley runs a cash for raffle event at Briardale Elementary, and during the event, the local sheriff's office shows up, and he's accused of gambling and charged with a misdemeanor and placed on probation. This all ends up being on the local newspaper, and it's kind of a big deal. So, moving forward. So what are the legal and ethical implications? So legally, Mr. Barley was convicted of a misdemeanor and placed on probation. Depending on your state, the raffle can be considered gambling and be against state law. Now, I don't believe there was any use of discrimination or harassment. Ethically, this should have been cleared with the local sheriff's office, not, plus the principal. There should have been board policies to check on about this. And then, the principal should have also double checked with the school district about the raffle. So synthesize. While conducting a school raffle to cash fundraiser, the local sheriff's office was tipped off of the event and the president of the committee was taken into custody and charged with a misdemeanor. So who are the people? We know Mr. Santos, the principal, Mr. Barley, the president of the foundation, and then Mr. Morley, who is a fraternity brother, he is mentioned, and then the local sheriff. The place is Briardale Elementary, and then the local sheriff's office. And the program we're working on is Briardale Elementary School, the Briardale Fundraising Foundation, and the Cash for Raffle fundraiser. So let's talk through some of the more information. So belief. I believe that when the fundraiser originally began, it had good intentions and good cause and was not meant to be extorted. The stakeholders are Mr. Santos, Mr. Barley, Mr. Morley, and the sheriffs. So some questions I have is, what is the school district's policy on fundraisers? Is there formal documentation for a school fundraiser or event? And, what do the other schools do about fundraising? So I've talked through some potential consequences. The first one is supposed to be no change. So Mr. Barley would keep his position, and the discussion about how this was a massive misunderstanding and this would never happen again. Number 2 is the most drastic. So Mr. Barley would lose his position as president, and then he would be banned from attending any more school events pertaining to Briardale Elementary. Number 3 is supposed to be a moderate, so Mr. Barley should make a formal apology to the school paper and work on new ideas for fundraising in the future. And then the other moderate option is Mr. Barley should continue his position with close supervision while Mr. Santos works with the school district to set up district policies and procedures to ensure that this never happens again. So let's talk through those. So with number 1, one of the pros is there wouldn't be an open position, but one of the cons is that they still have the issue of fundraising. There's no policies in place, and it's a mark on the community of how they view Briardale. Number 2, a pro would be that they would have to find a new position to fill the president. A con would be that they have to fill the position. This would take an active parent out of the community, out of the school. And then ultimately, the fundraising still needs to happen. So number 3, there's a pro is that there's a formal apology made, and the position of president is still filled. A con would be that the fundraiser is an issue, and this still makes Briardale look bad. And the 4th and final one, the position is still filled, and the district, a pro is a district also works to ensure that there's a universal policy in place. A con, nothing is immediately fixed, and the foundation could see these policies as hindering to their rights. So I actually chose number 4. I believe it was the best option. So number 4 reads, Mr. Briley should continue his position with close supervision while Mr. Santos works with the school district to set up strict policies and procedures to ensure that this never happens again. This decision would let Mr. Briley keep his position, and he ultimately did this with the students' best interests in mind. Sadly, he didn't realize there was laws or implications for this type of fundraiser. As the principal, Mr. Santos, I would work with the school district to implement a universal policy or procedure about fundraising. I think that if this happened at one school, it could definitely happen at another. And, this just led to a huge misunderstanding. And, obviously it was not meant to happen. And the original intentions were for the good. So let's reflect upon this. How are we going to implement this? So let's choose a path. First, I would begin by meeting with Mr. Barley and discussing his plans moving forward. I would then set up a meeting with the Briardale Elementary Fundraising Foundation to talk about new fundraisers to help make up for the missing funds for the school year. I would then request a meeting with the school board or the district to create a policy and procedure about fundraising and what is and isn't allowed. So, what happens? I believe if given the information, Mr. Barley would have not done this type of fundraiser. I know that there has been, because there's legal repercussions of it. I also believe that the fundraising committee would be open to following a set of districts and procedures to make sure that this never happens again. Who needs to know? So obviously the principal needs to communicate with Mr. Barley. They need to communicate with the fundraiser committee at Barley Elementary, and then, the school board or school district. The involvement, there's going to be a lot of involvement in trying to write policies and procedures for a fundraiser, and especially if it's going to be a district stated policy. Some things they need to talk about is informing the school board. They need to also work with a committee of parents. And then, I think a good idea, the principals and then their fundraising presidents need to get together. So let's warn, don't threat. I think this is when I would bring Mr. Barley in and we would have a one-on-one and see how he's feeling about moving forward. I would also discuss with him that I will be overseeing everything moving forward. Things need to be talked through before they actually happen. And we always need to have a plan B. So if the school district/school board refuses to move forward with creating a unified policy and procedures on how to properly conduct a fundraiser, I, as the principal, would create a policy for my building. The goal is to prevent that something like this would never happen again. And then, creating a unified plan in my building would also make sure that any other parties, any other groups, they would have a set of guidelines and policies to follow so that they don't ever fall into legal repercussion as well. So let's, some final thoughts. So if you look at the standards that we are using is PLO 6 and CLO 6.2. I have found that after completing the case study and being a building principal has more to it than just managing people. Building principals or the designated staff has to work to keep the budget balanced with a committee of people at times, and ultimately they're trying to provide the best education possible. A building principal should work to demonstrate the capacity of building strong relationships within the school environment. The goal is to improve staff and student relationships, working towards the goal of transparent communication. So how is this assignment relevant? This assignment is relevant because it helped to educate me in understanding school budget and having a committee that runs it, and how as a principal you play an extremely important role in that. I believe that we are taught as administrators that we need to delegate tasks quite frequently to others in our building. And, we just need to understand that when we delegate those tasks, we are still technically in charge of the outcome. We are still in charge of what people do, because that has a factor in, how people view our school and view our building. So, and as a reflection, moving forward as a future building principal, I believe that whatever committee I have within my school building, it will be mandatory that I have check-ins before completing their tasks. This case study was a direct example of, how the principal probably should have been a little bit more on top of the fundraising, especially as that works on the school's budget. He should have checked in more, and the principal, could have potentially seen the flaw in the system and seen how that this was, illegal and it was gambling. I personally, as a school principal, would hate to have that happen under my watch, and I would do everything possible to make sure that that would never happen. So, thank you so much.